Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. 15 male. Don't even know how to process what just happened in my life. I've read a lot of stories here before, but I never imagined I'd be posting something this insane. I feel like I'm stuck in some twisted reality show, except there are no cameras and no one comes in to clean up the mess. It's just me, trying to figure out if I'm somehow the bad guy here. My parents divorced when I was 9. At the time, I didn't really understand what happened. One day my dad was gone, and my mom sat me down and told me they were just better apart. For a while, I lived primarily with my mom. She got custody, and I stayed at her house during the week and went to my dad's every other weekend. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. When I was 11, my mom met Andrew. He was nice enough in the beginning. He had 2 kids from a previous relationship, Tyler, now 14, and Emily, now 9. They were polite, especially when the adults were around, but I could tell early on that we weren't going to be close. They had inside jokes and clung to my mom almost instantly. While I couldn't find the connection with Andrew, I still missed my real dad. After Andrew and my mom got married, everything started to shift. Slowly but surely, it felt like I was being phased out. I can't really pinpoint when it started, but I remember birthdays becoming joint parties, even though I barely knew these kids. I remember asking for help with school stuff and being told, "Can you wait? I need to help Emily with her art project." Or, "Tyler's having a tough time right now. Can you be patient?" I tried not to complain. I figured this was just what blended families were like. But over time, I noticed more and more how often I was put last. I never asked for much. I didn't want to cause trouble, so I just kept my head down and dealt with it. Then came the summer vacation incident that changed everything. It was mid-June. School had just ended. I was actually looking forward to some downtime after a stressful year. My mom had been acting a little odd in the days leading up to that week, like she was keeping something from me, but I didn't think too much of it. She was on her phone a lot, whispering with Andrew, and brushing me off when I asked what we were doing for the summer. I woke up one morning to an empty house. I mean completely empty. No sounds, no breakfast smells, just me. I wandered through the house calling for someone, but no one was there. I checked my mom's room. Bed was made. I checked the garage. Car gone. I texted my mom, "Hey, where is everyone?" 2 hours passed. Then I got a text back. "Hey, sweetheart, sorry I didn't say anything earlier. We're at the airport, taking Tyler and Emily to Disneyland for a week. It's Emily's birthday gift. Food's in the fridge. Love you." I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. I read it 10 times, trying to make sense of it. Disneyland. They were going to Disneyland. Without me. And they didn't even tell me. Not a word. Just gone. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I walked around the house in a daze. I opened the fridge and saw 2 takeout containers, some juice, and half a loaf of bread. No note, no plan, no explanation, just abandonment. I called my dad. He answered on the second ring. I barely got the words out before he said, "I'm coming to get you." No questions. He picked me up that evening and brought me to his place. For the first time in weeks, I felt like someone actually saw me. A few days later, my dad started asking questions. He wanted to know if this was the first time I'd been left out, if I felt like I was being treated differently. I told him everything: the missed birthdays, the canceled plans, the constant favoritism, the way I felt invisible in my own home. That's when he called his lawyer. Within a week, he filed for sole custody. The evidence wasn't hard to gather. My mom's text alone made her look negligent. Add to that my school counselor's notes, a few screenshots of other messages, and my own statement, and the case built itself. In court, my mom cried. She said she never meant to hurt me. She claimed it was all a misunderstanding. That the trip was a gift from Andrew's parents for their grandkids. That there weren't enough tickets for everyone, and they assumed I'm old enough to stay alone. The judge didn't buy it. In the end, my dad was awarded full custody. My mom was ordered to pay child support and granted visitation rights if I agreed to it. And now? She's begging me to come back. She calls daily, sends texts, emails, voice notes. She says she misses me, that she's trying to do better, that I'm being unfair, that I need to be mature, that I should understand they didn't have the money for all of us to go, that it was Emily's birthday and Tyler's big reward for getting through a tough school year, that I should have been more understanding. I've barely replied. I'm still angry, not just at being left behind, but at how easily they all assumed I'd be fine, that I didn't matter. Then last week she showed up at my dad's house, crying, saying I was breaking her heart, that Andrew is upset, that the kids miss me, that this has caused so much pain. But what about my pain? I told her I wasn't ready to come back, that I might never be, that she needs to take accountability. That saying sorry doesn't fix years of neglect. Now the extended family is getting involved. My grandmother, her side, called and told me I'm being cruel, that I should forgive, that I'm punishing my mother too harshly. An uncle told me this would scar her forever, but I later found out through my cousin, whose mother is pretty fed up with Andrew and spilled the tea, that Andrew and my mom are struggling financially. The vacation basically drained what they had saved, and losing my child support was a big blow to their budget. Now that she has to pay child support to my dad, instead of receiving it, it's causing tension between her and Andrew. Apparently, Andrew was never happy about her paying for anything related to me, and now he blames her for losing the money altogether. That's the real reason she wants me back, not out of love or guilt, but because their finances are crashing without the extra money. So Reddit, AAITA, for not going back to my mom's after she left me out of a family vacation and now has to pay child support. OP is definitely not in the wrong here. OP's mom didn't just forget to mention a vacation. She excluded OP from a family trip, left OP home alone, and then had the audacity to spin it as his fault for not being mature about it. That's not a mistake. That's abandonment, plain and simple. She made her choice. Now she's living with the consequences. Good on OP's dad for stepping up, and good on OP for recognizing his own worth. And now let's hear community's opinion. Not the a-hole. You're 15, and you showed more maturity and emotional intelligence than most adults I know. You didn't lash out. You didn't create drama. You simply left a toxic environment and went somewhere safe. That's not cruelty. That's survival. Your mom may love you, but love isn't enough. Love without action, protection, or inclusion feels a lot like rejection. You're not wrong for needing space and time to heal. Everyone sucks here, gently. Your mom absolutely messed up. What she did was deeply hurtful, and it's good that your dad stepped in. But blocking her out completely might come back to haunt you emotionally. At some point, when you feel ready, you may want to let her try to rebuild the relationship. Not for her sake, but for yours. You don't owe her anything, but sometimes healing means letting people prove whether or not they've really changed. Not the a-hole, and don't let anyone guilt you into thinking otherwise. She literally dipped out with her new, real family and left you with leftovers. She didn't forget you, she excluded you. Now that there are consequences, she wants a do-over? Nah, she cared more about managing her vacation budget than your feelings. Crying on the porch doesn't erase years of treating you like a second-class kid. Let her cry. You're finally somewhere you're wanted. Stay there. I, 30 female, have recently married my husband, 36 male. We have one daughter together, and he brought in a son from a previous relationship. We were dating for 9 years before we got married, so I was already familiar with his son. My stepson's mom is fairly wealthy, and she chose to send her son to private school in our state for the final years of high school. Instead of my stepson living in dorms, we offered up our home for him to live in while he was at school. I've never tried to take on the mother role for my stepson. However, while he's been living with us, I've done everything I can to make him feel as welcome as possible. We have an amazing bond, and I wouldn't change it for the world. My stepson plays on his high school's football team, and he has big dreams of playing professionally someday. Due to this, a lot of his mother's money is invested into his football training. From my own research, I'm aware of how much his private school tuition costs each year. It's a huge amount. I knew that his mother was well off, but I assumed that this tuition would be a huge portion of her spendings. Because of this, I'd offered to take care of the expenses for my stepson's football for the rest of his high school life. Of course, my husband is still paying half of his son's tuition out of his personal account. The deal worked amazingly for about 6 months. That's when I got a call from my stepson's mom crying and explaining that she was unable to pay her bills on time because of her son's tuition. My heart went out to her, and I offered to pay for his tuition until she got back on her feet. She thanked me and said that this agreement would only go on for a maximum of 2 months. 8 months later, and I'm still paying for his tuition out of my own money. I've made several attempts to talk to his mom about this, but she avoids the topic whenever it's brought up. One day, she came over to visit when my husband was out with the kids. I took my opportunity and confronted her about the whole situation. She brushed it off and claimed that it was helping me bond with her son. I reminded her that he had been living in my house for 2 years at this point, and I was also investing money into his high school football. She got extremely offended and claimed that I was trying to take credit for everything her son had achieved. She then told me that I was being selfish, as I was willing to support my daughter's educational needs, but wouldn't do the same for her child. I reminded her that my daughter goes to public school, and she only participated in one after-school activity. She then stormed off, and I haven't heard from her since. I decided to ask my stepson's school about his mom's involvement in the finances. That's when they told me she had removed her bank details from the system completely. I went crazy, and I then went on to remove my bank details. My husband found out about the situation, and he's telling me that I should suck it up and continue to pay for my stepson's tuition. What do I do? Not the a-hole. Tell your husband to deal with his ex-wife. It's not your problem. His other choice is to pay the full tuition. Switch him to the same school your daughter's going to. It's not ethical or fair to drain your resources in favor of your stepchild. This money should be saved for your daughter's college education and your retirement. Not the a-hole. To be honest, I don't think you should have offered to pay to begin with. You said you and your stepson have a bond, but you weren't trying to take the place of his mother. If she was having trouble paying, she should have talked to his father about picking up the bill. This screams setup to me, from the beginning of her sending your stepson to a private school in your state, giving you the sob story, and not your husband, the child's father, and you offered to help pay the bill. She knew exactly what she was doing. Now she's brushing you off, removing her bank details from school records. She should just have been honest. She can't afford her son to live his dreams, and she should have asked his father to pick up the bill. She's trying to make you all the bad guys, just in case he ends up in public school. When my sister was 16 years old, she got pregnant with my nieces, gorgeous twin girls. She was not at all fit to be their mom, and our parents were quite old by then and not able to care for them either, so I stepped in. I'm almost 10 years older than her. I had finished my education by then and had a stable job and relationship. 7 years have passed, and my nieces still live with me. My sister sees them regularly, but she never wanted to get custody of them. To me, it seems like she sees them as my children. I love them as if they were, but still, they're her kids. A few weeks ago, my sister told me that her boyfriend proposed to her. They want to get married in autumn. I was excited at first and mentioned that the girls would be thrilled too. She asked me not to tell them because she wanted to have a child-free wedding, although they both have children. Her fiancé agreed and seemed to have no problem to exclude his kids. I told her I would not lie to the girls, and she should tell them herself why they were not welcome at her wedding. Later, I heard from a relative that my sister's soon-to-be stepkids would be in fact at the wedding. The girls were excluded, so her fiancé's family would not get to know about her screw-ups. I was pissed. When I heard that and called my sister to confront her, she didn't even deny it. I told her I would not attend her wedding if she didn't have the girls too, and I also told her that she's the screw-up. Second one I am sorry about. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. This shouldn't even be a question, honestly. Your sister has some issues to work through, and so does her fiancé for going along with it all. Not the a-hole. If you ever run into her fiancé, let him know even though you have guardianship of your nieces, even though they are your sister's children. I would make a healthy wager the fiancé doesn't even know they are her daughters. And her wanting to impress his side of the family, hiding her mistakes, is a charade she will have to pull off till every single person on her husband's side of the family is dead. Any possible additional children will be loved and adored, and the twins will be ignored. You and their father, if he is still in the picture, need to look at counseling, therapy options, as this could be traumatic. Not the a-hole. Sooner or later, your nieces will find out that their mother refers to them as mommy screw-ups, and that's cruel. I wouldn't attend the wedding either. Get with a child psychologist to learn how to deal with this, so it doesn't in the long run create scars for them. I, female 55, have 2 children, Jane, female 26, and Fred, male 16. Jane moved back home a few years ago after graduating from college and pays $300 a month in rent. When Jane was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, so she went to public school for free. We started making more money when she left for college and decided to put Fred into private school. Jane was a straight-A student for most of her school career, apart from the last year of high school where she slacked off and got 2 Bs, which really disappointed me. I wanted her to resit the last year of high school to achieve her full potential, but she refused as the grades she had were enough to get her into her college of choice. On the other hand, Fred is what I'd consider to be a natural B student, so I gave him less of a hard time when his report card came home and it was mostly Bs and a few Cs, with only 1 A. The confrontation. Jane has been moody for the past few days ever since Fred got his most recent report card. We went out for dinner to celebrate last night, and she was sullen. Then today she lost it and blew up at me, asking why I took Fred out for dinner when he got worse grades than she had 8 years ago, but I had shouted and wanted her to retake a year when she has gotten better grades on paper. I told her to let it go because it's been almost 10 years since that happened, and I have different expectations of them because they have different potentials. She said I shouldn't be charging her rent because I'm wasting it on her brother's private school fees, and I didn't pay for her to go to private school, so she shouldn't have to pay rent to me now, as I'm investing more money on Fred than I invested in her. I said we would have sent her to private school too if we had been able to afford it, but we couldn't at the time, and she needs to pay rent now because she is an adult, and the money she pays to me goes towards the mortgage and bills. It doesn't even touch her brother's school fees. There is also no way she'd be able to live in this city for what I charge her each month. $300 wouldn't be enough to rent a shed in someone's backyard. She said I'm an a-hole for treating her and Fred differently, and stormed off to her room like a child. I've tried my best to give my children the best I could, and in my opinion, it wouldn't have been fair to not send Fred to private school just because Jane couldn't go when we had no money. And I know that Fred's grades would probably be even worse at public school. Am I the a-hole? Edited to add, my husband and I are planning on giving back to Jane the money she has paid us if she one day moves out and buys a house, so she is basically living here for free. Jane has a student loan, but so will Fred. I offered to let her go to college and resit only the B grades, but she refused flat out. You're the a-hole. You wanted her to take an entire year over for 2 Bs? I can't even touch the rest. That's far too much to unpack. You're the a-hole. It's fine that you recognize that they have different strengths and potentials. It's not fine that you pushed your daughter so hard when she was already shining. You reward Fred for Bs, but you were prepared to punish Jane severely for less than perfection. You put a lot of pressure on her, and now she's watching you fawn over your remarkably average golden child. That sucks. Wow. So you expected her to repeat her entire senior year of high school just because she got 2 Bs, and you're charging her rent to live with you? At the same time, her brother, who isn't even in the same league as her academically, gets catered to by having his private school paid for? Now that you're financially better off, are you paying anything toward her college, or is it all financial aid that she's going to have to pay back someday? You're basically pitting them against each other and showing her brother massive favoritism. I don't blame her for being pissed, honestly. Yes, you're the a-hole big time. I'm asking this for both myself and my husband. I used to work for the private school in question. One of the perks was heavily discounted tuition for my kids. So both of my older sons went to the school and have graduated. Last year, I got a new job in a different school. It's a very good state school. It was an incredibly good career jump for me. My husband works remotely, so he had no issues moving. My son was just about to start his final year of high school, but after much thinking and getting his input, we ended up moving because I didn't think I'd ever get a career opportunity like that again. Everything was going well until it was time for college applications. We were very surprised to hear that my son wanted to go to the same private school as his brothers. The out-of-state tuition for that school without my discount is absolutely unaffordable for us, especially with some recent medical bills we had. He then proceeded to list another private school in our state, but again, we cannot afford that kind of tuition. We were never the kind of family that put emphasis on Ivy League schools, and our son was never vocal about going to private schools either. Both my husband and I went to state schools. I told him the school I work for is excellent, and we'd save a lot of money with my benefits. This conversation ended very poorly. He said he would have never agreed to the move if we'd told him this would happen. This was a mistake on our part, I must admit. Our son went ahead and applied to the private school anyway, and got accepted. But my husband and I were firm that we would not be co-signing any student loans. We were not in a place to do that. He's made accusations of favoritism, which I refuse to accept. Our kids went to schools based on what we could afford at the time. Our son ended up going to the school I work at and is doing very poorly. He hates the school and has generally stopped talking to my husband and I. His brothers have tried talking to him, and he's just lashed out at them, accusing them of using all of our funds. That's created a whole other conflict. My husband got told by our son that he might be failing some midterms. It's extremely disappointing because our youngest has always been the most academically gifted. Now we're wondering if we stunted his potential. We will likely pull him out for a semester and get him in counseling. He's been very angry at us and regularly accuses us of ruining his life. I've cried a lot over it. Were we the a-holes? I don't know what position you have within the school, but I can tell you without question that I would stay at a garbage job if it meant my son could get the best education possible. As a parent, all of the things I do career-wise are so that my children can have the best opportunities possible. There's no amount of money that would be worth jeopardizing my kids' education over. And when it comes to university, especially American university, the reputation usually equates to opportunities for networking and additional learning outside the classroom. I'm not trying to hype up Ivy League schools or disparage state schools, but there is a reason Harvard and MIT have the reputations they do. So, are you an a-hole? I don't think so. Are you a selfish parent? Sounds like it. Career advancements are always available if you are willing to work for them. Info. It sounds like you may never have discussed your finances with your son, or how you would be able to, or not able to assist him. Is that correct? If so, it's quite likely he assumed he'd have the ability to go to the same, or another equally prestigious school as his brothers. Though people here call that entitlement, it does make sense that a 17-year-old would assume he'd receive the same benefits, especially since you were getting a much better job. At a minimum, it sounds like you could co-sign for his loans, but have chosen not to. All of this leads me to believe that he made a reasonable assumption based on his knowledge. The fact that you didn't discuss where he wanted to go seems like you weren't as involved, or assumed he'd go wherever you could afford, or worked, and would just deal with it. If I'm correct on all this, then I'd say you're the a-hole. You're the a-hole. I don't mean because you didn't send him to exactly the same school, and I do get that there were big financial changes involved. However, you knew that taking this new job would significantly change your youngest son's educational opportunities. And it was a big dropped ball that you didn't acknowledge this up front, and consider how it would feel to him to not even have the option to pursue the same path as his brothers. I get that this was a big opportunity for you, and I'm glad you got it. But I think you needed to go into this from the start with a clear recognition that this opportunity for you had a big potential downside for your son that needed to be baked into the decision. Not just as a recognition that it would change his options, but as a recognition that you needed a way to make that good in some way. Instead, what he heard was, I chose to pursue a job that meant you would never get the opportunity your brothers got, and my plan was that you would just suck it up. That's bound to really hurt. I think your best plan now is to admit that you really screwed up, and in fact, really didn't think about how this would impact him as much as you should have. Then sit down and start brainstorming solutions. The money you have is the money you have, but at least make him part of the conversation. Are there other colleges in reach? Are there other options like a gap year? Are there other ways you can help him to pursue other important goals? I think that he really needs to hear from you that he matters and that you realize you acted as if he didn't. I, 23 female, am one of 2 girls. My sister, 25 female, has been my best friend my whole life. When my sister was 16, she got pregnant and had triplets with her ex-boyfriend. 22 male at the time, not involved at all. My parents resented her and refused to have anything to do with her or the triplets. She ended up dropping out of high school right before the kids were born and moved in with her best friend's family. When my sister moved out, I was not allowed to have contact with her or speak to her. However, the family she moved in with had a son my age that I went to school with. He would send messages back and forth between me and my sister and help me see her. Last year, he and I got married. My sister has a full-time job and has her own place. She's a widow. He left his life insurance to her, as he came from a wealthy family that had one in place for him. After turning 18, I moved out of my parents' house. I'm the only childless adult in my family at the moment. I'm 8 weeks pregnant, but only my husband and sister know. But ever since I moved in with my husband, We've talked on the challenge of hosting Christmas dinner with my relatives, since I can only imagine how chaotic Christmas is with kids. I know my sister was extremely uncomfortable being around my parents after they abandoned her. Every Christmas, they'd berate her and be nasty to her children, and it's been an issue with my parents and I forever now. I beg her to come because I'm not going to let my parents tell me who I can and can't have in my life. I've only had them in my life because I feel guilty to be the golden child and just throw that away like it's meaningless. This year, my sister said she's not going to Christmas dinner because she can't handle how they treat her. So I texted my entire family who normally comes over, and I told them that my sister and I were having a private dinner this year and they could have Christmas dinner somewhere else. My parents have been furious for the past week, calling my house and calling my husband, my sister, and myself. They've been harassing us, calling me a traitor, and saying I shouldn't support my sister, though they definitely had different choice words. My cousins are also upset, and while they don't always berate her like my parents do, their parents do, in a much more passive-aggressive manner. My cousins never say anything and don't want to get involved. I do not expect them to stick their necks out and support my sister, but I also don't want them to go running to their parents and potentially bring drama to the night. I want this to be a stress-free holiday for my sister, who deserves someone to cut her some slack. My husband and his family all support my decision, but I can't help but have some doubt that maybe I'm being unfair to the rest of my family. Not the a-hole. Holy crap, your parents are a piece of work. They throw their daughter, pregnant with triplets, out of the house, and now they're crying, family. Hypocrites. Dump their nasty butts and be done. Not the a-hole. The rest of your family have choices. Their treatment of your sister and her children leave her limited choices. I applaud you for doing what I see as the right thing. They surely don't worry about your sister and her family's feelings, so you shouldn't place any more importance on theirs. Enjoy your holiday with your sister and her children. Merry Christmas. Not the a-hole. I'm just surprised it took this long for this to happen. Your parents and family sound like the worst. They abandoned your sister at the time in her life she needed them most.